Welcome back. You're watching the Press Club. Before the break, we were talking about the DPP's bombshell this week regarding the impacts investigation report. Last week, sorry. As I said before, when we started rather, I think this whole issue has given rise to more questions than we have answers to. The biggest question for me is what happens next. If the DPP is to believe that there's no hard evidence on which to base cases against those persons involved in the impacts investigation of extrajudicial police killings.
She hasn't said so. She hadn't got that far. She had, in fact, the DPP issued a statement on Monday in which she was clarifying. She wanted to clarify that she was being misquoted and there were lots of misinterpretations of her statement. And she said absolutely that she has not said there are no cases to be answered. All she has said is that she doesn't have the evidence, right, and therefore she has requested it. And she has also concluded in her mind that the things are not at a stage to go to court yet because some of the cases are still being investigated, so the investigation is not yet complete. But she made it absolutely clear that she has not concluded that there are no cases to answer or that the report that no cases can be laid. So it is in that context that I think we're brewing
but the question that I'm asking here is that even in those cases, we've had inquests done in the majority of those cases. And even though the United States has not come forward and said anything on the issue, and they rarely do, even though I think Mr. Rickwin has said so on several occasions, the United States does not, as a matter of practice or diplomatic practice, announce those countries on which it has imposed the Levy law. My question, my issue is whether this is going to change anything, and is the Prime Minister's meeting with the police officers and the comments and statements that he made an admission that perhaps he's not very optimistic about it?
Well, I'm not too sure about that. I would not speculate on what the Prime Minister thinks and how he interprets it. He's a lawyer par excellence. I have all confidence in his knowledge. You know, people claim that he didn't know what he was doing. How could a bright man like Kenny don't know that this thing can't go anywhere? I think having worked with him, understanding how he thinks and how he acts, and interpreting what he said on the evening of the 8th of March, I am of the view that this Prime Minister is determined to see this impacts process go the whole route from the standpoint of every single lawyer, whether you be DPP or Prime Minister or Minister of Home Affairs, every single lawyer has to always have at the forefront of their considerations the ensuring that the wheels of justice seem to turn. And even if they turn slow, they have to turn. And Kendall, one of the things that you and I have not done, and nobody else is doing since the DPP issued her statements, is considering the family of the victims. Where does that leave them? Are we saying to them, are the people who are saying that the DPP has thrown out the report and has shown that it's a waste of time and money, are they saying to the families, no hope for justice? Are they saying to the police officers who are accused and who know themselves, are they saying to them, there's no chance that you'll be able to go and clear your name in court? Are they saying to St. Lucians that in a situation where 12 persons died from police bullets in less than 1 year as a result of and during a special operation that had political blessings, are we saying to the nation that by virtue of the DPP saying that there was a flaw in how the report was given to her and that the report that was given to her was insufficient in its content, are we saying to the families of the victims and to St. Lucia that on that basis we have to forget the need to have a conclusion? There is an interesting article in today's Voice by former Minister of Foreign Affairs, Neville Snack, who has an interesting proposal. He said rather than try and deal with this in the courts, let there be a diplomatic solution to the impacts report. Now, a diplomatic solution that he is suggesting there doesn't take into consideration the families of the victims, it doesn't take into consideration the courts, it doesn't take into consideration the judicial process. A diplomatic solution would be something that we would work out with Washington in order to get us off the hook from the Leahy Act, and so that our SSU and our Coast Guard could start getting U.S. training again. But where does that leave the fact that 12 persons died by police bullets and 12 different cases involved there have been investigated by a regional body that has come to a conclusion that in every case there needs to be a judicial solution and approach? Are we saying that on the basis of an assumption of procedural technicality, is that that should throw out the need to ensure that this process goes through the natural judicial process, so that if the police are not guilty as they claim, if the police who have been accused of extrajudicial killing did not consider what they did was extrajudicial killing, give them a chance to go in a court and say, listen, this is what happened. Similarly, give the victims' families a chance to hear, this is how my brother died. This is why my brother died. So that at the end of the day, you have that. If I listen to Mr. Snack, and he's saying let's not have a judicial and legal and criminal investigation and have a diplomatic...
But is that really what he's saying? Is it unrealistic to expect that both things can happen simultaneously?
Well, he's saying one should replace the other. He's saying that there should be a diplomatic solution and not the other. I'm saying that if we're talking about ways out, then you're opening the Pandora's box, because there are people who are going to say, let's have a Truth and Justice and Truth for Justice and Reconciliation Commission. Let's tell the police officers who are accused, tell us the truth and we guarantee you're not going to jail. And let's tell the victims of the families of the victims, listen, your family is not coming back, so we're going to work out something to bring you to meet the police officers in a room. You all should hug and kiss and forget about the past and move on. So I think we're doing much ado about nothing. The discussion is important, but I do not think the discussion should be over whether the impacts report is worth the paper it's written on. I don't think the discussion should be within the context of whether the DPP beat Stanley Felix on his head with a hammer, whether it should be a situation where the DPP is going on retirement. What's going to happen to her office? Is her office as slim as she says? There are those in her office who would tell you it's the biggest DPP's office we've ever had, occupying more space with more lawyers. Lawyers are never enough in a DPP's office. But what is important is how the independent DPP, who is the Lord and Master of the office, decides how to run his or her office. But like I said, I've looked beyond this DPP, and it's not about Mrs. Victoria Charles Clarke. It's about the next DPP, because she would have to be replaced. Will her replacement come from the office? There's no deputy DPP, she has pointed out. So will the replacement come from somebody in her office? Will the position be advertised? Will the government, I don't know how it's done, who recommends the DPP? Will the next DPP, or should the next DPP be from within the office? Will it be a St. Lucian? Will it be a non-St. Lucian? What will be the circumstances if a non-St. Lucian is selected? Because we have people referring to the impact report as having been done by Jamaicans and not by fellow CARICOM nationals. So if a non-St. Lucian DPP is appointed from the standpoint that a non-St. Lucian DPP can bring even more independence to the position, will that be accepted in a situation where we don't even want a Saudi Arabian to have a St. Lucian passport?
Let's shift gears a little because we run out of time quickly. The St. Lucia Labour Party preparing for a major convention and anniversary celebration tomorrow. That is the headline in the Voice newspaper. The ruling party goes to Vieux Fort for 65th anniversary. This year's open session of the St. Lucia Labour Party's Conference of Delegates will be held in Vieux Fort tomorrow, Sunday, and the event will take on greater meaning, however, as the party celebrates its 65th anniversary. Meanwhile, you've had the UWP, which is the subject of the Mirror's headline. The UWP fails SLP's fourth report card. So while the Voice newspaper is saying the SLP says there's much to celebrate, the UWP is saying not really.
Yeah, well,
we know where you stand on that.
Who owns the Mirror newspaper? The chairman of the United Workers' Party. The Mirror newspaper, unfortunately or fortunately, we have had the freedom, like in Britain, for newspapers to tag themselves and tie themselves to political parties. The Mirror is tied to a party, the Crusader, which we haven't seen for some time, was seen as untied from a party, and that's how it's done. The Mirror's coverage of the UWP convention was quite different, remarkably different. So, you know, I looked at the headline in the Mirror: UWP fails, SLP fourth report card, and it starts off with UWP fails. I wouldn't have that in my headline in the Mirror. But let me deal with a more substantive issue. The SLP has issued a report card. That report card is not necessarily to be, it wasn't issued to invite an opposition response. It was issued so that St. Lucians generally can examine it and determine whether it reflects the reality, whether it is true or not. The SLP is going into what is, by all intents and purposes, going to be its last convention before the next general elections. It has indicated that it is going to name at least some of the candidates for those seats that it did not win, the 5 seats that it did not win. It has indicated that some of those candidates, in fact, all of those candidates have been selected, but the extent to which it will make revelations may have to do with some of them having to curtail their current employment rather than announcing themselves as candidates while still in employment.
Yeah, we don't want to repeat of Gina Cornell. Whatever happened to her?
Pardon?
Gina Cornell.
I would suspect that she's still at the at GIS.
Because she's gone very, very quiet. But what stuck out to me in reading today's papers and listening to the SLP and UWP's comments during the week, the UWP seems to have done a fairly good job of pulling together post the last convention, organizing their press conferences, taking swipes at the SLP. Meanwhile, you have emerging here, and it was carried in a number of stations, on a number of stations this week, and in the Star newspaper today on page 10, on the eve of another SLP anniversary, unappreciated old soldiers speak out. But we're due for a break. Let's take the break. When we come back, we can probably look at that. This is the Press Club. We'll be right back.